Now go.
Welcome to Pompously Political.
Can we just admit that religion's fucking crazy?
One may ask himself, what does it mean to be batshit crazy?
The political podcast that's just a little bit pompous.
If you're apostolic, you had to go get on your knees at the altar, which always sat really funny with me.
In this episode, we cover the news and other stuff.
It's just a little gentle ribbing, for your pleasure, if anything.
And now here's your host, Jimmy and Scott.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're a little bit late this time with the Pompously Political Podcast because of, internet issues, like everyday life. Internet. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible thing, the internet. Yet we can't live without it. Otherwise, you won't be able to see us, and we've been able to put this on. So, yeah. I am
be able to post pseudo-intellectual comments on your Facebook page.
That is correct. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am huffed, I am puffed. I've been waiting to do this podcast all day, and so I am ready to go. Without further ado, I am co-host Jimmy.
I am co-host Scott. That's 3 weeks in a row. It's got to stick now.
Yeah,
we are co-hosts.
Yeah. You tell us, ladies and gentlemen, would you like us to be co-host? Would you like us to be heroes? Or just Jimmy and Scott?
I'd like me to kick Jimmy off the podcast and be my own host.
Oh! I sense a coup in our future. But, ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot of stuff in the news today. One big incident that we will be getting to shortly after, but of course, with all things, we must start off with a slow progression of events. Starting with, of course, what do we got, Scott?
Sorry, what? That was the worst segue ever. Are we talking about diphtheria?
Yeah, diphtheria.
Is that what we're supposed to go into? We should have practiced this more.
Well, we were too busy trying to figure out the internet, Scott, so I didn't have time.
Diphtheria, I don't know what it is, but apparently it's been extinct in Spain for 28 years until anti-vaxxers struck.
Right. Well, what diphtheria, if you're curious, Scott, you could play Oregon Trail. It's much like dysentery in the sense that you can contract it while playing Oregon Trail. Spain reports that they had their first case of diphtheria. I can't even say the name. Diphtheria in 28 years. A 6-year-old contracted it because his parents did not have him vaccinated. His parents were anti-vaxxers. Of course, they've been treating him with antitoxins in order to treat the issue. It served as a wake-up call to the parents who then got their youngest daughter to be vaccinated. So what a lot of people don't understand is that when it comes to vaccinations, whether your kid is vaccinated depends upon the herd immunity, right? If you have 5 kids and 3 of them are vaccinated, then the other 2 could potentially put the other members at risk, even though that they are vaccinated. So the more you have vaccinated, the better off it's going to be. Do you have any thoughts on that, Scott?
No, just the herd mentality that you mentioned, or the herd theory. Isn't that like the actual term? The technical term is herd theory.
Right. Herd theory or herd immunity. They have a lot of interchangeable names. Science. That's what I call it, science.
Yeah. But it just goes to show that this whole anti-vax movement it's not saving anyone. It's actually causing us to regress a little bit. You may not agree with the processes, or you may have your issues with whatever it is you have your issues with. But the most people that have the issues aren't scientists and have no clue what they're talking about anyways. So. Right. And now we're starting to see the results of, I guess we can call it sheer stupidity, mass stupidity.
Right. Well, the thing about it is that we all want what's best for our children. We all want what's best for them in the sense that anything and everything that could be potentially harmful is a bad thing. coming to our kids. We want to maximize their survivability, hence why we created vaccines in the first place, to keep propelling our species forward, if you will. But the problem with it is that these anti-vaxxers are afraid that these vaccines, I know that there's a huge deal about polio, or was it no, it was a polio vaccine. One of them supposedly caused or was linked to autism, which was later debunked and proven false. Jenna McCarthy was a huge advocate for anti-vaxxers.
Michelle Bach.
Michelle Bachmann is another one. So if anything that has Michelle Bachmann tied to it, you should probably not listen to. With that being said, you've created another problem. You've tried to keep your child from the harms of, or potential harms of vaccines by ensuring that they are exposed to another harm, which is the virus that they're trying to vaccinate against.
It's like they don't realize what they're actually saying when they're saying let's not vaccinate our kids against these diseases, because there's the slight possibility that this other terrible thing can happen. They don't consciously realize that they're at the same time they're saying I'm going to protect you from this one really small possibility while exposing you to numerous exponentially higher possibilities.
Right.
Some of which can even be deadly. I mean, this diphtheria, looking it up real quick, it causes death in between 5 to 10% of its cases.
Right. Which this 6-year-old is extreme. First of all, he's extremely unlucky to get diphtheria in the first place. Mm-hmm. But he's fortunate enough that he's coming 28 years after the fact. 28 years ago, yeah, it could be a certain death sentence. So we do have certain measures that we have in place now with modern medicine that we can take advantage of and help this kid to ensure that he'll survive from this diphtheria. The only thing is the key word there is modern medicine. You might as well partake in the modern medicine before you need it for a situation like this and just get your kid vaccinated. It's the bottom line.
Yeah.
So, yeah, unless you got anything on there, moving on. I don't really...
No, there's a couple more interesting topics that I wanted to get to.
Okay. Of course, the situation in Texas that I really want to get to, but first we have to talk about our good friend Pope, who's dope. I probably popped a little bit on there because I didn't have the pop filter on here, but Pope is dope, and Santorum doesn't like that, according to Huffington Post and a couple other outlets out there. Rick Santorum came out and said that the Pope has no business throwing his hat in the ring as far as climate change because he's not a scientist. Which yeah.
To Santorum's defense, there is some validity in that comment in generalization. And we've said many times on our show that using the Bible as justification for why you should be allowed to speak on a topic of science, hogwash should not be allowed. It's I think the term I borrowed last week was woo-fuckery. It's pointless. That doesn't give you any basis to have an intellectual debate or discussion on the theories of science because of what some goat herders wrote 2,500 years ago. So in that sense, he would be correct. However, when you go after someone specifically, you should probably understand who you're going after and who you're saying these things to. Now, I'm sure his mindset was, the Pope is the head of the Catholic Church. This is a message to, religion as a whole. We'll go right to the top. Not realizing that the Pope is a chemist, the master's degree in science.
Yeah, the Pope was speaking not from the stance of the papacy per se, but the stance that he has as a man of science, as a chemist, as a person who studied in the field of scientific, pursuits. Chemistry, is a pretty big deal for somebody to have credentially to go against somebody like Rick Santorum, who has not the inkling of scientific understanding. So, and then of course,
the Republican Party.
Rick Santorum then clarified in the sense that again, he believed that from the Catholic standpoint, that the Pope didn't have a say in what climate change, if it's indeed man-made or not, or that we should do anything about climate change, because the Church should be associated with moral implications and religion. So he was trying to separate that, while saying that he should be allowed to talk about climate change for the simple fact that he's a politician who is supposed to affect the general public and speak for the general public. Well, the general public overwhelmingly agrees that climate change is a man-made, that is caused by man-made means such as pollution and so forth, carbon emissions, all that good stuff. So you're not helping your case, buddy, because you're not speaking for the general public when you're climate change denying. So.
Yeah, and we've talked a couple times. John Oliver had his segment that still resonates with me. Bill Nye has been a huge proponent of, there's no debate. There's no more debating this. It's fact. There's no questions. Climate change is real. We are causing it. There's other factors that go into it, but one of those factors is us, and that's fact. You can't debate that anymore, so we need to stop debating and move forward, which President Obama has also come out and said that he agrees with, that we need to stop talking about these fairy tales and move forward on doing something to fix this. So, those Republicans, man, going cray-cray.
Right. They're always cray-cray, man. The thing is that the moment when Rand Paul does things like speak out with a 12-hour filibuster for the NSA, why don't we have somebody like that stand up for a 12-hour filibuster on some sort of enactment of fracking or environmental policies that affect us as a whole? That seems more important than the NSA. The NSA stuff, don't get me wrong, is important, but I think the ultimate survival of our species depends upon whether or not we have a planet that we can.
If we don't address climate change and come to some type of resolution where we can extend our life on here, the NSA is not going to have anybody to spy on.
Right.
Because we're all going to be dead. So.
Right. There you go. Right there, Rand Paul. If you want my vote, support the efforts to do something and reverse the effects of climate change. We can't have any. Antarctica's being affected. The North Pole's being affected. Your home state of Florida is being affected, and while Rick's
my state of Florida is going to disappear. Half of it's going to be underwater. I mean,
right.
Goodbye, Miami.
Yeah, the United States flaccid penis will diminish in size dramatically.
Well, it is getting up there in age. I mean.
Is the water getting a little chilly, Scott, down there? Is that what's happening?
A little bit. No, but it's just climate change as a phenomenon is amazing, especially when you look at what is happening and what's going to happen. And as a species, we are resistant to change. We don't want to hear that the possibility of us killing ourselves is real, and that we actually are capping our expectancy because we're removing the world that we need to live on. Human trait, but there are some steps going forward. But to really grasp what's going on, I mean, I said goodbye Miami as a joke, but seriously, they've predicted a couple times now that at the current rate, with no changes, Miami will be underwater by the end of the century. Miami will cease to exist. I mean, let that sink in for a minute. An entire major American city will be underwater. And it's not just Miami. Miami's not even going to be the first to go. I mean, there's entire countries that are going to go. I think Bangladesh was one of them.
A lot of our cities, like I said, Washington, D.C., Seattle will be underwater. And of course, the drought that's taking place in California is a direct result of climate change. The thing about it is, I I also read an article that scientists in the field have said that we are 5 minutes from midnight as far as an extinction level event coming with respects to climate change. In the sense that we are so very close. We're on the cusp, if you will, of no return. And it's because the endless debate that's going around on this. Okay, climate change exists. What we do about it from here is what will matter. Doesn't matter if it's man-made or not. Let's just figure out a way to do something about it. And the ways that we're going to be able to do something about it is if we cut emissions, we stop with stupid things like fracking, first of all, where you have earthquakes being increased in areas of the country where they shouldn't be. And we need to have a sort of incentivized system that benefits renewable energy sources rather than fossil fuels.
So let me give you a hypothetical question.
Okay.
Based on something that I don't remember exactly what it was that you said, but it immediately triggered this question. Endless debate. You said endless debate.
Right.
We're having endless debate over climate change. If democracy, as we've come to understand it in the republics that have been established around the world, allows for the endless debate, that allows for individual freedoms and all the things that we enjoy that come with that, yet prevents action to correct, massive things that need to be corrected, like climate change. Is democracy worth it? Is our freedom to do what we want, freedom to have this endless debate, is it worth it if all we're going to do is kill ourselves in the end?
Well, to answer your question, Scott, I have to refer to in the founding of our nation, first of all. Let's start there. Okay, in the founding of our nations, the United States Constitution was non-existent. We had the Articles of Confederation, which gave there was no centralized government. It was essentially each state was sovereign in itself, and that we were unified as the United States. But each state was essentially sovereign, to the point where each state was printing their own money, their own currency. It was impossible to regulate trade and commerce, and taxation was another thing. Hence why we needed to create a centralized government. The other problem is, when it came time for war, okay, during this time you would have to go to each state and make sure that they were willing to go to war with you. Okay, that's where that endless debate comes in. You have an enemy on your doorstep, Scott, and each state is essentially having to have a say in it before something gets done. That's essentially what's taking place in this debate about climate change. While we have the United States Constitution, we have a central government, we've shifted our views as far as the democratic process into a more representative democracy, that as opposed to a direct democracy, in the sense that the individual itself doesn't matter as much as the representative that we vote for. So, in that sense, when it comes to issues like this, we don't have time for direct democracy. We don't have time for endless debate. Action needs to occur. It needs to occur from a federal level. It needs to occur from an entity much larger than an individual self. So in that sense, we would not, obviously, if we just let climate change do its thing, there's going to be no need for democracy anyways. So you might as well make some concessions now and allow the sorts of changes that we need to take place, and then figure out that. Cross that bridge when we get there. But I think that democracy is failing us if we fail to enact policy that will ensure our survivability. So, in a roundabout way, that's what I was trying to get at, right?
Well said. I tuned out about halfway because it's really hard to take you seriously when I know that you have Hello Kitty headphones on.
They're not Hello Kitty, they're Adventure Time, man.
Oh, Adventure Time, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know which is worst.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, Scott. Here's an interesting thing. In Hawaii, when I lived in Hawaii, they didn't have Hello Kitty. They had Aloha Kitty. And all it was Hello Kitty, but with a slightly darker tan and a hoop skirt on.
So Lilo from Lilo and Stitch.
Pretty much, yeah. So they just merged the two together.
So
Yeah.
it was very, very well said. Very good answer. Not to put you on the spot. I come to that question a lot because in the movie V for Vendetta, there is a line that the announcer says when he's on TV. It's a television personality that he says when they're basically bashing America, because they bash America a lot, and it's that the democratic experiment has failed, or something to that effect. And it always makes me think about, is America really an experiment? Like, are we? What's the world going to be like 200 years from now? Is America still going to be here? Like, I don't know. I randomly get on those trains of thought. Anyway, we'll move on before I go too hippie on us.
I like the Zen, Scott. It chills me out. Yeah. What's the meaning of life, man? And I'm just like, yeah, man. That should be our podcast.
We talk about leaving a better world for our children, but really, at this point, what kind of world are we leaving for our kids?
Right. If we are that close to an extinction-leveled event, and we're not going to leave much of anything for them. And that's sad. That's sad to think that our children are going to have. They're not going to. Number one, by our grandchildren, I don't see us having much of a future. Our children will have to deal with the problems that we're dealing with and so forth. We're just passing the buck. We're kicking the can, and it's unfortunate.
It is. So, moving on to another topic, I got another hypothetical question for you.
Okay. I love hypothetical, Scott. Pompously hypothetical.
if 30, 40 years ago, we'll say somebody develops an imaginary friend, or they develop another version of themselves inside their head.
I do that every time.
And they begin to the imaginary self, the other self, begins to progress, begins to grow within them, to the point that they're confused about which version of them is the real them. If they were at one point to give in to the other self, the other version of themselves that they have created in their head, they hate Oreos, but their other self loves Oreos. Something to put it in childish terms like that. We would diagnose that person as either schizophrenia, or multiple personality disorder. Correct?
You're correct in that assumption, yes.
Then how is transgenderism, or the transgender phenomenon, any different?
That's a lovely question, Scott. And of course,
I know. I wish I could take credit for it, but I took it from somebody.
We'll let you take credit for it. Trademark it. To answer your question, Scott, this is how I see the difference. Okay? When you have somebody that has multiple personalities, yes, you can have. I feel that is a legitimate diagnosis for people that have, split personality, multiple personality. Yes. However, scientific research has advanced to the point where perhaps at one time those within the transgender community were, of course, lumped into that because it was an unknown. They didn't know quite. We love to pigeonhole things, including people, and so people that don't fit the social norm then get placed in these other categories. So they have a term for it now that's called gender dysphoria, which is that you, on the outside, it's on the outside you are what you are. Obviously, if you have male genitalia, then you're a male. If you're female, then you have female genitalia. However, what you view yourself and how you feel inside is the opposite. So it's called gender dysphoria. Now, that's the terminology, the mental illness side of the terminology. Do I feel that is correct in that diagnosis. Do I feel that there's anything wrong with transgender people? No. I feel that, in that case, let me throw this out there before I forget. The only treatment to gender dysphoria is transition, is surgery. There's no other treatment for that. So as opposed to if you have multiple personality disorders, medication is recommended, right?
Mhm.
So that's where you find the difference. Is it's not that you are somebody else. It's that you know who you are, but what you see on the outside is different. Does that make sense?
But again, it's the exact same thing. All you're doing is, rather than saying I'm Scott but I'm also Zach, is saying I'm Scott but I'm also Caitlin. All you're doing is changing the gender. It's still multiple personality disorder, or just looked it up, dissociative identity disorder. There isn't a surgery for multiple personality disorder, because if I think that I'm Scott and I also think that I'm Zach, chopping off my penis isn't going to help either one of us.
Well, the thing is okay. Let's look at it in these terms, Scott. And of course, the people that may be tuning in right now, of course, we're talking about gender identity and gender dysphoria, the transitioning between male and female, so forth. Okay, Scott, your identity as Scott was given to you by your parents, right? You didn't know who your name was when you were born. They told you were Scott. The thing about it, and they told you were a boy, right? Now imagine they tell you these things, but instinctually, you feel that's wrong. No, I'm not that. I'm being told this on a day-to-day basis. I'm being told that I have to wear blue and I have to play sports, right? But that's not what I want to play with Barbies or whatever, and I want to wear pink. Yeah, you know, of course, that's a very simplistic way, and of course, I don't care what you wear, pink, whatever. But the thing about it is they give you that identity. You yourself, within you, already know who you are. So if inside you, from that very early age, if you feel like Caitlin, and you feel like you're a female rather than male, then that's where the difference is. Because rather than multiple personality disorder, where you're Scott, but then on certain days you feel like Batman, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're like, oh my God, I'm Bruce Wayne, I'm Batman.
I'm
whatever.
Batman.
So eventually, after living that delusion long enough, the delusion takes over for the reality. That's not the case for gender dysphoria. You've always been that person. It's just conflicting with the identity that everybody else has given you. You see what I'm saying? So when you look in the mirror...
But if you were to put it in comical terms like Scott and Batman, of course, yes, that would make sense. But when you're putting it in terms of, you know, like I said, I'm Scott, everybody has told me that my name is Scott and that, you know, I enjoy these things. I enjoy religion. I enjoy, you know, football and these things. But actually, I don't. I enjoy goth music and heavy metal, and you know, it's a completely different version of still a male, but it's a completely different version. It's literally the exact same thing. The only difference is that we're talking male to male and male to female, or female to male, whichever way it goes. And I also agree. I don't have any issues with the transgender community. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying it's, first off, I guess to back up, the gender identity disorder or gender dysphoria, whatever it is actually attributed to a biological imbalance, a chemical imbalance in the body, which flows into all the other stuff, you know, the Bruce to Caitlin or whatever, since that's why we're talking about this. Whereas I can't find anything on dissociative identity that says that's also a biological imbalance. So there is a bit more medical backing up for the gender dysphoria, but looking at it, I guess how I'm trying to say it, I can't see the difference. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, both people should be medicated to be fixed and get back in there. You know, maybe the psychology community has gotten it wrong all these years. Maybe gender or dissociative identity disorder, multiple personality disorder, maybe it's not really a bad thing. You know, maybe you just let them go, transition into that person if they're going to be a better person like that. Why can't I be Zach? You know, why can't Bruce be Caitlin? I don't have any issues with it, but it's really one and the same.
Well, again, how I view the difference. Like, take the movie, was it 23, the movie that had
Jim Carrey?
Jim Carrey in it, where he became a completely different person, and he was solving this crime. When come to find out, he's the one that committed the crime in the first place. Spoiler alert, guys. Sorry.
Damn it, I ain't seen that movie yet. Killing me.
But anyways, so the thing is that the person that he was, the murderer, whatever, that's who he was. He knew that's who he was, right? You get what you following me so far? So if you spend your whole life, nobody's told you that you like the color blue, right? Nobody's told you. You just feel, I like the color blue. And then slowly, you this person over here starts to develop in your brain that says, I don't like the color blue, I like the color red. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that right there is multiple personality, or dual personality. Because multiple would mean you'd have a person that likes red, a person that likes black, and there's Zach and John. But dual personality is where you have a separate entity that's there. You know what I mean? Okay, like the Hulk. So then you have somebody else, right? Okay, in the case of gender dysphoria, you've always liked blue, right? Or you've always liked red over blue, and that everybody else is telling you you like blue, but you knew your whole life that you liked red instead. You see what I mean? So like, even though they're feeding it to you and going, I'm supposed to like blue, deep down, I know my entire life that I've liked red. You see what I'm saying? That's where the difference is that it's not an identity that is coming, it's manifesting and appearing over the already established identity. It's the identity that's actually there, while there's a thin veneer of an identity that's been placed upon you, right? Scott the male, deep down inside him, he knows he's a female, and he's always known he's a female. So
wait, what? Where does this conversation just go?
I'm using you as an example. So for those listening, Scott's really not a female. He's a female. I mean, unless you are, man. If you were to contact me a week later and be like, man, I do feel like Caitlin, I'd be like, right on, man.
Nope, I'm good.
But you see,
who I am.
Can you see that difference, though? That when you
can see what you're trying to say. I don't agree.
Okay.
I don't. I think it's a tricky subject. Like, I don't agree. I think it is just another form of multiple personality disorder. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's something that needs to be medicated or treated or suppressed or anything like that. A lot of the examples with multiple personality disorder go into, well, one person's normal and one person's a serial killer. And that's obviously not what we're talking about here. You could just be two versions of the same normal person.
Right. Well, let me put it like this. Let's take somebody who is just gay. They're homosexual. Okay. They're attracted to the same sex. So, society tells them that they should, like if you're a male, right, you should therefore be attracted to female. But you know that you again, if we follow the narrative that it's not a choice, you know and have known that you've always. I had a text message that completely fucked me up. Okay,
almost made it through the episode without cursing.
Oh no, the gods. But so.
And I did say woo fuckery earlier, so.
Oh, okay. So we're up to 2 now. The thing about it is you know that you've always been attracted to men, right? So when the world tells you that you're attracted to female, and then you say that you're attracted to male, how would that then be different? Would then homosexuality be a mental illness as well then? Because it'd be that other personality that likes something different than what... You see what I'm saying?
If you were to simplify it to that point, then yeah, I could see where you're going with that. But we're not talking about a sexual preference. We're talking about a complete identity.
A gender preference. A gender preference.
Gender preference.
You prefer yourself, and you view yourself as the other gender. You see what I mean? The gender that you identify with. And believe it or not, there's some people that don't identify as either gender. Can you believe that? Like, there's people that don't feel male or female. They don't have that label. Prince. the artist formerly known as Prince. His symbol was of he trying to merge masculinity.
He's back to Prince now. That got
He's
resolved.
Okay. He decided his split personality went away. Is that what you're saying? Oh, he got tired of competing with Morris Day, and he's like, man, I just got to go back to being me. But what I'm saying is he tried to merge in that little symbol that he was for a while, the image of masculinity and femininity into one symbol. So he did not identify as just male or female. He identified as genderless, asexual, or there's people that are asexual that don't have any sexual attraction. There's also people that have I don't want to offend anybody. So if anybody in the LGBTQ community would like to vocalize their opinions in this conversation, we totally open the floor to you on that aspect, because it's a little difficult for us to understand. So, yeah.
Indeed. We're gonna move on though, because that conversation could keep going down that rabbit hole. And there's another pretty big conversation we need to get to about. Put it up on the website as police going cra-cra in Texas.
Right. Cool.
Which we agreed we were going to play the video for this, which I've got it pulled up. So let me get it over here.
Okay. Now we will warn you that the video is kind of I don't want to use the typical. Now this video is shocking in nature, so please be advised. But in the sense that if you have children, it can be pretty disturbing. So just be prepared for that.
And we're going to talk through the video. There's a couple points where I'll pause the video, and we'll have some discussion points and back and forth. I took notes on this. I guess I told Jimmy that he sent this to me, and I saw it about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I couldn't go to sleep until 3 o'clock in the morning until I actually got up and wrote down everything I was thinking. So
right.
Watched it a couple times already, but we'll go through it again. Let me set up my screen share.
Okay. And be sure to pause it after he does that little tuck and roll, because I want to mention that for a second.
Yes, because this. Here he comes. Here he comes.
Okay.
Boom.
Now
that's funny right there. I don't care who you are. That's funny.
The first time I saw this, I thought he was trying to do a fancy parkour move or something to try and look like a badass. But in reality, he just tripped. He fell, and of course, in a couple of frames, you'll find out that he, in the heat of the moment, had lost his flashlight or something, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and I'm trying to find the Google Draw thing so that we can draw on this picture. Where is it at? Is it loading? Maybe. It's not. Okay. So he drops it. If you look at his left foot, it's down just to below and to the left of him. It's a little black spot on the ground.
You can probably see the little. You could probably see the little mouse that when Scott moves it around. Hopefully.
So you see the two of them running across the street. He's directing the other guy to go away or to go round him up down the corner. And basically they're rounding up the kids at this pool party, which they had gotten called into. Originally one officer responded, and then it ended up being 9 in total. Now the guy with his arm out. He's the problem officer. Make sure we focus on him. I'm going to point out a couple other interesting things as we're going through this. So kids are running the other way, talking about dropping a flashlight.
And as you notice, there are a lot of kids out here. That's the key thing that I...
Which is a pretty common thing. There was a couple comments about people that used to live in this area that there's always pool parties here. Now, we'll pause it right here. This officer right here, pay attention to how he conducts himself. He's talking to the kids. He's in a normal voice, and he's very understanding.
No, it wasn't his. It wasn't his. It was his.
Don't take off running. The cops get you. What's up, man?
It was.
See? Oh, thank you. Don't take off running. We're just here to do our jobs. Blah, 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 that whole thing.
Okay, guys, I appreciate it.
He's being stupid, and he's pointing out their stupidity. That's what he's doing.
Okay, that's what's like.
It was this guy's. It was that guy's.
See, he's being really cool, and then this guy, who is tripping balls or losing his damn mind or something, comes up and starts throwing kids to the ground. This is the part where it starts getting a little difficult to watch.
I told you to stay. Your ass is down on the ground.
Now, if you notice here, the other officer actually tries to stop him. He's like, hey, calm down, whatever.
Right.
I think he reached over and tried to grab him at one point.
He's chasing these kids, which these kids are being stupid, and they probably should get in trouble for it, but still not.
That's debatable.
Right.
All right, so group of females right here. Oh, hey, you can see my mouse. Okay. Group of teenage females right here, which he's telling them to leave. He's being really rude, but he's telling them to leave. At this point, they should have left. So this is where they screw up. They should have just walked off across the street, gone to the cordon area, because the police do have the authorization to clear an area out while they're doing the investigation into what's going on. So at this point, they should have left. They choose not to.
Well, can I say that it looks like these people had just gotten there and they were confused as to what was going on in the first place. So if you have a cop yelling at you to leave the area and you're like, I just got here, what's going on? Like, you're completely confused.
All right. Notice this girl here. She's important later on. Also, shout out to the kid with the phone. This is amazingly high quality footage. If you go and watch the video, it's super clear. Like, there's blades of glass. Yeah, blades of grass. Really impressed with the phone.
Right.
No idea what that stuff is. Alright, so now he's assessing the situation. I don't know if he's trying to find another kid to arrest or what he's doing.
Right. Now, here's another thing, and I hate to point this out so far, but did you notice the race of each kid that was on the ground?
Yep.
All black.
Yet the kid that's recording this is white, and not a word's been said to him so far.
He hasn't even been told to leave the area at this point.
Yep.
I know where it is. Right now you stay.
Okay. White guy shows up. Nothing said to him.
See, now that lecture, completely unnecessary. I get that you're frustrated, but you're a professional. You should know how to separate your emotions from the situation, and he is failing miserably at that right now. Now, he notices the group of girls over here that's still here. Remember the girl that we mentioned earlier? Now, the kid has also admitted, the one that recorded this has also admitted that the girls were talking smack. That was probably a very poor decision.
Right.
So now he's yelling at him, trying to push him away. And he's yelling at him, "Get your ass gone," which is the very 1960s racist white guy thing to say.
Right.
Throw that out there.
And again, the guy in the jean shorts is just allowed to wander around. Apparently, if you're white, you're not.
This is where it starts getting crazy. So she said something, now he's throwing her to the ground. There is no reason for this. None whatsoever. Now,
Okay, can you pause this for a second and rewind just a little bit? Because I thought I saw him punch her in the face.
no, he throws her to the ground, and then he pushes her face down. Now, watch. This guy right here. As he comes up, him and his friend, he takes his hat off,
Right.
and then he goes like he's going to hit him. Gun comes out.
Right.
They take off. Other cops run up. Kind of a moment of, what the hell are you doing? And then they notice the two kids are running off, so they take off after them.
Right. Which they're doing everything right, and this guy's doing everything wrong so far. This girl's like, what, 90 pounds to his, like, 170?
There's no reason for this. None whatsoever.
Why are you sitting there, Mr. Jean Shorts, not doing anything? Like, I don't understand what's happening with this guy. Why is he allowed to be there, but nobody else is?
Now he's putting all his weight on her back.
Just how, essentially, how Eric, wasn't that how Eric Garner died? Was he?
They were putting the weight on I think Eric Garner's throat. The one time he tells the kid with the camera to leave.
It's because he finally knows he's being videotaped.
Get out of here or you're going too.
All right. Now the other cops are going to come back here in just a second. It's also a little disturbing when they come back, but kind of understandable at the same time. She's saying she has back problems, and he basically tells her to stop fighting. So
She's not doing anything.
it's not the right answer. I mean, anyways, I've got my notes. We'll break this down a little bit more here in a second, but
Okay.
right now we're just going to play it through. Now, he threatens to take her to jail. I don't see how or why. What justification he would have to take her. That is a completely empty threat, except she's a scared little 14-year-old that doesn't know any better.
Right.
At this point, he's taking his weight off of her.
And again, look at the size difference between this guy and that girl. There's no need for him to be that harsh with her when she's that small.
All right, so here's the kid that kind of bowed up on the officer. If you can tell, it looks like he's spitting something out. He's going to roll over here in a second, and it looks like he spits out a tooth. He's spitting out blood. Which means either... I'm not going to presume anything other than he probably fell really hard, and he was probably assisted in that fall.
Right. He was probably tackled, to be honest, is what I would imagine. Which is completely justified if you're running from the police. You might get tackled.
Now he's going to try to explain it, and I'm going to warn you right now, this logic makes about 0 sense. But we'll listen to it anyways.
I personally told you to get on the ground and stay. And what did you do when I walked away? So you just did what everybody else did. And what everybody else did was illegal. You did it, and you got caught. They did. Now you're sitting here paying for it. I don't have a problem. That's not my problem. I asked you all to sit. You became a part of the mob. It could have been the guys...
Notice they use the word mob. There was no mob. There's various reports that confirm there was no mob at all in this instance. Alright, so we're at the end of that. Oh hey, there's my little drawing thingy. I'm going to throw that away now.
Yeah, now that we don't need it.
Indeed. Alright, so there's a couple... I guess points to make here. Let me pull out my trusty little notebook here so we can go over them.
Okay. Of course, we'll get the outcome of what's happening to the police officer in a bit, but...
Indeed. So there's a couple unknown variables just by watching that video alone. Number one, I think we have the answer to now, which you can elaborate on. Why were the cops called in the first place?
Okay. The cops were called to the situation, Scott, from the various reports that I have gotten so far, and one of there's a video account of this as well, that there were, first of all, there's some tension within the neighborhood that there is a housing development that was put off to the side that is now accepting Section 8 housing applicants or, poor housing applicants, people impoverished. So there's been some tension within the community. Obviously, these people within Section 8 housing were invited to a pool party, which at some point some ladies were making some racist comments towards them, telling them they need to go back to where they came from, and so forth, which then ensued into an argument between a lady and a teenager. So that was what essentially prompted the police to get there.
So there was also what the kid said in his interview when he was talking about it after was that he and his friends had showed up, and I guess all the other kids there were the black kids that were arrested were all his friends, which is why he stayed. That there was a ticket or something. So for each person that was invited, they got a ticket, and that ticket allowed them to then bring 2 more people. And basically, more people showed up than what was authorized based on the ticket plus 2-person limit. So it initially started as there's too many people here, some of you are going to have to go. And that obviously turned into what you said, the racism and everything else that was displayed that was just completely uncalled for. Now, the other variable, what exactly happened when they arrived? Was there a mob? From what I've heard, there wasn't. It was cops showing up. According to, again, to the interview with the kid that filmed that, the party was already over. Everybody was leaving, and then the cops showed up. So, you know, what do you do when you're a bunch of kids and the cop shows up? You run. Not the right choice, but as a kid, you don't understand that. You just, I don't want to get in trouble. I'm out. Started running, which leads the cops to freak out, to do what you saw there. But there's also, I guess, moving past the unknown things that we can kind of just speculate about. There is a series of poor decisions on both parts, the officers and the kids. Now, the kids are a little bit more forgivable because they're kids. They don't have fully developed, you know, reasoning and logic capabilities in the brains, you know, which we can talk about scientifically or whatever. Not leaving when the officer told them to was a bad decision. Running away after the officer told them to stay, bad decision. The latter being obviously born out of fear. But then to stay with the group of girls that was there, to stay and then to talk shit to the officer and run their mouths, again, really bad decision.
But it's a decision again that a kid would make. Again, this is a group of kids. If you look at the neighborhood, okay, yes, we do have these Section 8 housing people that could potentially be at this party, so they may be of the poorer variety. However, most of these kids are probably pretty middle class and entitled. So of course they're running their mouths because they're kids. You know, maybe they have a little bit of affluence. I don't know. You okay?
I think I'm gonna die.
Are you allergic to racism? Is that what's happening?
Give me a sec.
Okay. So while you're doing that,
Oh God, that hurt.
wow.
You know, when you like take a breath, and then you have saliva, and it goes down the wrong side.
Yeah. I did that with my tea last episode, and I tried to play it off like.
There's no playing this off, and the camera keeps switching to me every time I go off. Okay. Yes, you're right. They're talking about the Section 8 housing that's there, but if you look at the neighborhood in that video, it is a very nice neighborhood that is manicured, or landscaped lawns that are well kept. Those are nice houses with garages. I mean, that's not a poor neighborhood that this is being filmed in.
Right. So I would wager that the majority of the kids there are of that neighborhood and not of the Section 8 housing.
Right. There's also the poor decisions on the side of the officer. The use of excessive force, throwing the kids to the ground. They're 14-year-old kids. There is no reason to be grabbing them, putting them in an armbar like that, and just slinging them around. Rather than separating their emotions from the event, they responded to the disobedience with even more aggression. The guy that, you know, the controversy is surrounding in this video was clearly not handling the tension correct. There is a certain protocols that you have to follow when you feel like you're walking into a mob scene to control the mob. One of those is to understand what is going to provoke the mob and to make the situation worse, and then not do that. I mean, that's common sense practices. If I'm surrounded by a bunch of kids who are obviously scared and are already responding poorly to this circumstance, what can I do to make this worse? Probably start grabbing them and throwing them around, putting all my weight on them, because that's completely unnecessary. Yeah, let's do that. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, I think you touched on this slightly, but again, when you're in a situation where tension's already high, because let's face it, let's throw some science in there. When you're running like that, your adrenaline goes up. Your adrenaline goes up, and you're not able to think as rationally as you would like. So you already have that element that's injected into the situation. So when you enter a situation that is high adrenaline, high tension, the worst thing you can do is then accelerate that and make it worse and add fuel to the fire by being more aggressive. So, of course, you have family members that are watching their daughter, their sister, cousin, whoever, being thrown to the ground by a cop that's twice her size for running her mouth. Okay?
Yeah.
Granted, she shouldn't have ran her mouth, but that is the wrong thing to do. And on top of that, we've had a lot of situations lately where cops have been put under scrutiny for actions, whether it be police brutality, killing unarmed civilians, so forth, that you would think that you would be minding your P's and Q's when policing people. You'd go, maybe I shouldn't be that guy. Maybe I should calm down and listen to the other two officers next to me who clearly are like, maybe you should chill out a minute, man. Like, he just...
Yeah. And there's a whole section of training, I'm sure, that is dedicated for them, that is dedicated to recognizing when you are not responding well to a situation and taking steps to correct that, not continuing to respond poorly. I'm assuming that guy failed that class. Hypothetical, of course. But there's two other... That's the big... one of the two big, I guess, issues here of the poor decisions was not recognizing that he was not responding well, that he was making the situation worse, and removing himself until he could respond appropriately. There's plenty of other officers there that could have handled that. And I'm not a fan of armchair coaching cops. I tend to support the cop's decision because they're not there, but in that case, there's no reason he couldn't have stepped to the side with 8 other officers there to cover him.
Right.
And then he pulled the gun. Now, there's two sides to this. One, he's defending himself because that kid, I can't think of a better phrase, so he bowed up on him like he was going to attack him for what he was doing to the girl on the ground, which, perhaps the kid, he had some balls until the gun came out. In that situation, pull a taser, pull a nightstick, pull mace.
Or how about you grab him and wrestle him to the ground?
Yeah, do something like that. There is zero, none, not a single time where in that situation, there is no variable in that situation other than that kid has a gun in your face, where it's acceptable to pull your gun on a kid who is simply trying to protect his friend.
Now, I did see people try and justify his actions by saying, well, his finger wasn't on the trigger, he was just trying to scare the kid. Well, that still doesn't justify the situation. And the fact of the matter is if you're in a situation to where your emotions are running that high and you're pulling your weapon out, mistakes can be made even further than that. That could be dead. That kid could be dead right now because you took it too far.
Right.
You wanted to scare him. So
there's some ethical dilemmas that I think this is really presenting. I think that's what this whole thing comes down to. Number one, and we're going to have to go through these because we are running out of time very quickly. Going to have to go through these quickly. I think I left that word out. Quickly.
Right. You were trying to get to the sentence quickly. That's what happened.
Did the kids have a legitimate concern that propelled their disobedience to not go across the street whenever they were ordered to, out of concern for how their friends were being treated to make sure that their friends were not abused, or beaten, or anything like that? Is there enough of a concern there to justify them not leaving?
Okay, my 2 cents on that is, okay, you have to figure in the factors here. Number one, a lot of these people are trying to the situation at this point has become so chaotic that people are trying to figure out what exactly is taking place, what is happening. It was once a pool party that spawned into an argument that now has police throwing kids to the ground and apprehending them. Okay, if you're sitting there and your friend's on the curb, you're gonna ask them, what are you doing here? What happened? Right? That's what's taking place. So in that sense, the confusion of it all justifies them being there. Second, here you have a police officer that is clearly out of control. Okay, and you have him being video.
Hold off on that. We'll get back to that.
Okay.
That'll be the third question I have. The second one is, did the kids have a right to charge the officer?
Okay, on that aspect, I could see why he did it, but I do not feel it was the right move.
Okay. I kind of agree. I tend, when I see situations like this, I tend to reflect back on other police brutality videos that you've seen where they have a suspect on the ground and their emotions are getting the best of them, and it's 5 officers that are just beating the hell out of a guy.
Right.
Or a girl. There was a video, I think it was a girl in Walmart, of like 4 officers. One dude just keeps punching her in the face. Like every time she talks, he just punches her in the face. Another situation where he's a lot bigger than she is. I can understand that they've probably seen videos like that, and they're thinking that's what's about to happen, and they're going to protect them, protect their friend. That's admirable. I mean, that's sticking together. I don't know that it was the right decision. Which goes into the last question I have, the last ethical dilemma. What are limitations to an officer's power and authority when he's on a scene? Because in a situation like this, where he is clearly not in the mental position to handle the situation appropriately, should there be limitations on what an officer can do?
I think yes. I think that, first of all, police should be trained in such a manner that they diffuse the situation before it escalates into a bigger problem. It's common sense. And in this case, I feel that this police officer's actions did nothing but fuel the very problem that he was trying to prevent, the very problem he was trying to stop. So, in that aspect, I feel that the other officers should have intervened, pulled him to the side, and calmed him out. Pushed him to the side and said, okay, you sit over here, we'll handle everything from here. Okay? Had they done that, had they placed that limitation upon that officer, A, the girl wouldn't have been wrestled to the ground, that other kid wouldn't have ran in the first place and then possibly lost the tooth, spit up blood, whatever, right? Yeah. And then the situation wouldn't have magnified to the point that officer would still have his job. He probably would have got yelled at by his superior and said, don't do that ever again, but he would still have a job. You know what I mean? As opposed to now, he's facing the potential that he might be losing that job.
Yeah.
Over a situation that he clearly was not prepared to handle.
I can see why we would say that. I can see even agreeing with placing limitations, but that's a slippery slope. That is a very, very dangerous road to go down, because once you give the public authority over an officer, well, now you have to factor in, I guess, subjectiveness on, well, was he really out of mental capacity to handle the situation, or are you just saying that so that you could justify attacking him?
I'm not talking about the public intervening as much as the other police officers that are on the scene intervening. And of course, in a situation like that, if that officer was on his lonesome and he was acting the way he was, then I think the public should step aside, let him do what he does, and then have him pay for the consequences after the fact. Okay? But
because this was a good neighborhood. So had the adults there subdued him, they probably would have just held him on the ground until other officers got there to then do what you said and to reprimand him or whatever needed to be handed till they got situational control. The public would have handed the situation back over. But let's look at Baltimore. What if the police would have allowed the mobs that were forming around Freddie Gray to, granted they would have saved Freddie Gray's life, but what's to say they wouldn't have killed the officers in the process?
Well,
what's to say they would have responded equally, with equal measure? And that's not just say Baltimore. I mean, just any hypothetical situation where you can't guarantee the officer's safety when you remove his power. But to have the other officers do it, I could totally agree with that.
Right.
I just don't see that ever happening.
And I think in situations like this, okay, obviously we could go into the beneficial aspects of having body cams on police officers to hold them accountable for their actions while on duty, which I wholeheartedly support. I believe that body cams are a step in the right direction in this sort of situation. On that note, there shouldn't be anything that impedes an officer from doing his duty. He should be allowed to do his duty as long as he's able to perform that function in the capacity of which he is capable of handling. Okay. So, like I said, if the situation was spiraling out of control and they had that visibility via the camera, then obviously his superiors are going to look at it and go, "Wow, you dicked up," and then the situation would be handled as such. Now, I'm going to throw a scenario that I am fairly familiar with to kind of give you an example here as to the extent of ridiculousness in this case. A friend of mine and his little brother. Okay, his little brother was probably about maybe 10 or 11, and they went to the local park with some toy guns, and they were I don't know if they were playing cowboys and Indians, if they were shooting space aliens, whatever. And the police arrived, pulled weapons on them, threw them to the ground to the point where this 10-year-old boy had pissed himself because he was terrified of this police officer. They didn't know what was going on. They just rolled up there, pointed weapons at him, threw him to the ground, and apprehended him. And then only to find out that they were toy guns and that the situation was blown out of proportion. So in situations like that could easily, like there was an incident where a kid was shot because he had a toy gun, that these sorts of situations could benefit from having an individual, a police officer, take a step back before they do something, right, and actually think of the situation. Why roll up there and immediately have guns drawn instead of roll by and try and figure out what's going on before you do something? Realize, okay, these are kids playing in a park. These are kids at you roll up to a pool party. Okay, what's going on? What's the details of the story before I start busting heads and throwing teenagers to the ground? And in that aspect, I believe that there should be limitations or accountability. Let's use the word accountability. There should be accountability for such behavior like that.
Completely agreed, and unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, that is all the time we have. What do you think about these topics? Let us know. Hit us up on the tweet machine at Polypompous. Go over to the website, polypompous.com. You can see them both on my screen right now. And guess what? When Jimmy talks, they're on his screen too.
Whoa! Look at that. Did you see it, ladies and gentlemen? My crazy face. Woohoo!
All right, well, we've had fun discussing some of these issues. Obviously, there's as always, these are some rather sensitive topics that we're trying to hit here and trying to hit them quickly. And I'm sure we're not doing every viewpoint justice or hitting every point adequately enough. But if you want to continue the conversation, like I said, please feel free. We are always happy to have a conversation on Twitter that runs for 3 days and leave comments on the website. Also, hit us up on Facebook.
Yeah, I do apologize to individuals that have asked questions. We will get to them. Obviously, this sort of situation came up out of nowhere, and we felt that we needed to talk about it. It's all over the news right now, and if you really want to get informed, there's articles on outlets like Huffington Post. You can even go to Yahoo News, and there's articles on it as well. So get informed on it. It's very important. If you want to see change within your community, you need to be informed on issues like this. So without that, yeah, I just want to say, guys, have a week.
Take care. Keep thinking.